All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive with us. This is actually our third one. I'm so excited about this topic. As always, we're taking all that amazing info you guys sent in, and we're going to break it all down. Whether you're prepping for a big presentation, got to ace that term paper, or you're just like me and can't resist a good mystery, just come to the right place to become a total whiz on, wait for it, the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah, you heard that right. We're talking about that infamous triangle of ocean that's been making ships and planes vanish for centuries, or so the stories say. So, are we dealing with a genuine enigma? Or are there perfectly reasonable explanations for these disappearances? Let's dive in and find out.
You know, what always gets me about the Bermuda Triangle is that even its location is part of the mystery. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm talking about a place notorious for making things disappear.
Yeah.
But this doesn't even have, like, official boundaries.
Seriously.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd at least have a dotted line on the map or something. So, how do we even define this Bermuda Triangle?
Well, that's the thing. Its boundaries are pretty loosey-goosey. You'll find some folks saying it stretches from Florida to Bermuda to Puerto Rico, and others claiming it goes way beyond that, covers a much bigger chunk of the Atlantic. This lack of a clear definition, honestly, it makes it super tough to track disappearances accurately. I mean, how can you say something vanished in the Bermuda Triangle if we can't even agree on where it starts and ends?
It's like a mystery wrapped in an enigma.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into the incidents themselves, let's talk about how this Bermuda Triangle legend even got started. Was it always this infamous, or did something happen to really catapult it into the spotlight?
It's a classic example of how a good story, a dash of fear, and a sprinkle of the unknown can really capture people's imaginations. The Bermuda Triangle myth? It really blew up in the mid-20th century, fueled by tons of articles and books that were, shall we say, a little heavy on the drama. And the supernatural...
Yes. The mid-20th century, a golden age for conspiracy theories. Were there any particular writers or works that really stand out as the main culprits in spreading the Bermuda Triangle myth?
Oh, absolutely. Vincent Gaddis is often given credit for first using the term Bermuda Triangle back in 1964 in a magazine article, but it was Charles Berlitz, with his mega bestseller, The Bermuda Triangle in 1974, who really took it to a whole other level. He threw in things like Atlantis, time warps, even alien abductions to explain those disappearances.
Okay, time warps and aliens. I could see how that would fly off the shelves.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing our sources also include some more, shall we say, grounded perspectives on all of this.
Fortunately, yes. There were researchers who took a much more skeptical approach, much more evidence-based. One of the big names is Lawrence Kusha, author of The Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved. Kusha did a ton of research on many of those famous incidents. And guess what he found?
What's that?
A lot of the mystery was, well, kind of made up.
Ooh, spill the tea. What did Kusha uncover that really challenges the popular Bermuda Triangle narrative?
One of his key findings was this. The number of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle, statistically speaking, is no different from any other busy shipping lane. It's just that those Bermuda Triangle cases got way more attention, way more embellishment. He also found that a lot of incidents blamed on the triangle actually happened outside its supposed borders.
Okay, so we're already seeing some exaggeration, maybe a bit of creative storytelling. What else did Kusha dig up?
Well, he pointed out that a lot of the writers, they kind of ignored the most obvious culprit. Bad weather, hurricanes, rogue waves, that super powerful Gulf Stream current, they can all cause chaos for ships and planes. These are real, documented dangers. That often got overshadowed by those more outlandish explanations.
It's like that saying, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. The simplest explanation is usually the most likely one, especially when you're dealing with something as unpredictable as the ocean.
Absolutely. Kusha also discovered that a lot of the Bermuda Triangle stories were full of inaccuracies, missing details, even straight-up fabrications. It seemed like some writers were more into crafting a captivating story than sticking to the facts.
Yeah, which makes for a better story, but not so much for the truth.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a researcher basically debunking a lot of the Bermuda Triangle hype. But what about that one incident that's almost synonymous with the myth? The one that really kicked everything off. I'm talking about Flight 19.
Ah, yes, the disappearance of those 5 Navy bombers back in 1945. That case is like the poster child for the Bermuda Triangle legend.
5 planes just gone, no trace. No wonder it sparked so many wild theories. Can you refresh our memory on the basics of the Flight 19 case?
So Flight 19 was a group of 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers. They were on a routine training exercise out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, supposed to fly east, then north, then back to base, but they never made it. The official Navy report. blame the disappearance on navigational errors, made worse by bad weather.
Right, and wasn't there something about the lead pilot, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, being super confused and disoriented during the flight, almost like he was experiencing some kind of mental...
Option.
Exactly. And to make it even creepier, a PDM Mariner seaplane, sent out to search for Flight 19, vanished too, taking its 13-man crew with it, 27 people gone, just like that. That definitely adds fuel to the Bermuda Triangle fire.
It's definitely a tragic event. But there are some important details that often get left out. For example, the Mariner was known to have problems with explosions because of vapor leaks, especially when it was carrying a lot of fuel, which probably would have been for a long search mission. So, while it's still a mystery, the Mariner's disappearance might have a simpler explanation.
Okay, so a possible explanation for the second disappearance.
Yeah.
But still incredibly unsettling. What if Flight 19 didn't actually go down in the Bermuda Triangle? What if Lieutenant Taylor got their location wrong and they ended up crashing somewhere else entirely?
You're thinking about the theory that they might have gone down much further north, maybe off the coast of Florida.
Exactly. If the most famous Bermuda Triangle incident didn't even happen in the triangle, doesn't that throw the whole myth into question?
It would definitely challenge the idea that there's this specific area with unique dangers. It suggests that the Bermuda Triangle's reputation is more about perception and storytelling than actual localized phenomena.
Let's talk about some other incidents. Our sources mention a few more that contribute to the Bermuda Triangle mystique. The USS Cyclops, a massive Navy cargo ship, vanished in 1918. 306 men on board, no wreckage ever found. And then there's the Carol A. Deering, a 5-masted schooner found totally deserted in 1921, sparking theories about pirates, mutiny, even paranormal activity.
Those cases are definitely strange, no doubt about it. But they also show how quickly we jump to the supernatural. When faced with the unknown, the Cyclops was carrying a huge load of manganese ore, which could have caused it to break apart and sink suddenly. As for the Deering, its disappearance is still unsolved, but there are plausible explanations. Bad weather, navigational errors, maybe a combo of human error and bad luck.
It seems like a pattern here is this. We tend to look for patterns and explanations, especially when we're dealing with something as vast and unpredictable as the ocean.
I agree completely. The human mind is wired to seek meaning and order. When we're faced with the unknown, we try to fill in those gaps with whatever explanations we can find, even if they're based more on our imagination than on actual evidence.
So we've looked at the legendary incidents, the debunking research, and how human psychology plays a role. Now, I'm curious about the science. Are there any natural phenomena that could explain some of these disappearances?
You bet. There are actually a few fascinating natural occurrences that happen in the Bermuda Triangle. And while they might not solve every mystery, they're worth exploring to understand what's really going on in this region. One theory that gets tossed around is compass variations. See, the Bermuda Triangle doesn't have any unique magnetic anomalies, but it does experience normal compass variations, where magnetic north doesn't quite line up with true north. This little difference, it's called magnetic declination. It can definitely mess with navigation, especially if you're using an older, less fancy compass.
So you're a sailor, way back when. You're relying on your compass to guide you across the ocean. You think you're going one way, but because of this magnetic variation, you're actually slightly off course.
Yeah, that could lead to big problems, especially if you're traveling a long distance.
Exactly. And these variations are totally natural. It's just the Earth's magnetic field doing its thing. Nothing spooky or specific to the Bermuda Triangle. It's a reminder that even simple tools, like a compass, can be affected by things we don't always see or understand. Makes sense. What other natural phenomena could be at play here?
Well, there's the idea of methane hydrates. These are huge deposits of methane gas trapped in this icy structure, like a cage on the ocean floor. They form under high pressure and low temperatures, and if those conditions change, whoosh, they can release that trapped methane in a sudden, explosive burst.
Methane hydrates. Those are those frozen methane bubbles you see in those nature documentaries, right? They look like underwater snow globes. So beautiful, but I bet they could be dangerous too.
Yeah, you got it. And those eruptions could cause major issues for ships. Picture this, a sudden methane gas release. It creates these pockets of low-density water. A ship sails into one of those pockets.
Uh-oh.
Boom, it loses buoyancy and sinks super fast, without much warning at all.
Whoa, like the ocean just swallowed it up. Has that actually happened in the Bermuda Triangle?
It's a good theory, but there's no direct evidence to link methane hydrate releases to any specific disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. The U.S. Geological Survey has been keeping an eye on things, and they haven't seen any signs of major methane releases lately. But smaller releases, those could still be dangerous, and they might not leave any obvious traces.
So the jury's still out on methane hydrators. But it's a cool example of how powerful and unpredictable nature can be.
For sure. Speaking of unpredictable, there's another force of nature that's been blamed for some Bermuda Triangle incidents: rogue waves.
Rogue waves, I've heard stories about those. Giant walls of water that appear out of nowhere, like the ocean's version of a sneak attack.
That's a great way to put it. Rogue waves are powerful and unpredictable. They can be over 100 feet tall, and they're probably caused by a bunch of factors all coming together: strong currents, converging wave patterns, even the shape of the ocean floor. And unlike regular waves, they can pop up even in calm seas, catching ships totally by surprise.
Yikes. Like the ocean's throwing a surprise punch.
Yeah.
Have rogue waves caused any damage or shipwrecks in the Bermuda Triangle? There's more and more evidence that rogue waves are more common than we thought. They've been known to damage oil platforms, cargo ships, even cruise liners. It's definitely possible that some of those unexplained disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle could be because of these monster waves.
Makes you realize how powerful nature is, even with all our technology and knowledge. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about the human element. You mentioned how our brains love to find patterns and explanations. But what about stress? How does that affect decision-making? Especially in a life or death situation at sea.
You're right on the money with that. Remember Dr. George Everly and his research on stress? He talked about condition black,
Yeah.
a state of total cognitive meltdown. That can happen when people are under extreme pressure.
He said that in condition black, people can't think straight. They might freeze, panic, or make impulsive decisions. That could have terrible consequences. How does that apply to the Bermuda Triangle? Imagine a sailor or a pilot caught in a sudden, violent storm. Maybe they even run into a rogue wave. The fear, the confusion, the stress. It could trigger condition black. That might explain why some ships have been found abandoned, lifeboats missing. But no distress signals, no sign that those lifeboats were even used properly.
So maybe they didn't try to ride out the storm or use their safety equipment. Maybe they panicked and made bad choices. That led to tragedy. It's a scary thought that even the most experienced people can be overwhelmed by nature and by the limits of their own minds.
Exactly. It shows how important it is to understand how stress affects our thinking, especially in dangerous situations. It also reinforces the idea that the Bermuda Triangle myth might be more about human perception. We tend to look for supernatural explanations when there are probably more realistic explanations based on natural phenomena and human behavior.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The myths, the debunking, the science, even the psychology behind why the Bermuda Triangle is so captivating. What's the bottom line for our listeners? What can they take away from all this?
Well, I think the Bermuda Triangle, even though it's probably not this uniquely dangerous place, it teaches us a really valuable lesson about critical thinking. It reminds us to question what we hear, to be careful about those sensationalized stories, and to always look for explanations based on evidence. It's a perfect example of how misinformation can spread, especially when it feeds into our fascination with the unknown.
Right, just because a story is exciting or dramatic doesn't make it true. We all need to be careful about the information we consume, whether we're reading news articles, scrolling through social media, or even digging into historical events. It's all about asking the right questions. Who's telling the story? What's their angle? Do they have any proof? And what might they be leaving out?
Exactly. It's like being a detective. But instead of solving crimes, we're solving mysteries of information. And the tools we need are critical thinking, healthy skepticism, and a willingness to look at things from different angles.
Love that analogy. And the Bermuda Triangle, with all its weirdness, is a great place to practice those skills. Before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. If the Bermuda Triangle isn't really swallowing up ships and planes, what other strange events might have more down-to-earth explanations? What other mysteries could we solve if we use this same kind of critical thinking?
That's a fantastic question. The world is full of mysteries, big and small. It's up to all of us to approach them with curiosity, an open mind, and a healthy dose of skepticism. Who knows what amazing things we might discover when we embrace the joy of asking questions and the excitement of searching for answers.
I love that. So keep those minds curious, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Bermuda Triangle. We'll be back soon with another adventure in knowledge.